But bottom line is, we've put our money where our mouth is when it comes to standing up for law and order. Yeah, you got to set leadership at the top, and we've done that. But we've also recognized that it really only works because you've got a lot of people who are willing to put themselves on the line to protect their community members. And that's what people do in Florida every single day, and they're able to do that with a sense of pride. And so what we've done has worked. And I think it's important to point that out as I come here to Illinois. We were in Philly and New York, and again, I'm here saying come to Florida if you want to be a part of this with law enforcement, because it's something that we're really serious about. But it's also broader than that, because I can't have everybody moving to Florida. I mean, it's nice that people want to be, but you got to get some of these right. And here's what we know, particularly over the last few years. The reason why you have crime that has spiraled out of control in so many of these different areas is because you have politicians putting woke ideology ahead of public safety. And you see it now. I know in Chicago, you have all these candidates. They're all trying to outwoke each other. The left of the left is where they run. And then they end up running on these platforms that destroy the communities they're elected to represent. And if you look back, it wasn't just since 2020, it was before that, but after 2020 summer, it ratcheted up where you had these politicians, these woke people attacking and demeaning people wearing the uniform. You saw how ugly it was during those riots. I mean, the riots were bad enough because they're burning down all these businesses and burning down people's property. And you had like $2 billion in property damage for the Floyd riots. You had dozens of deaths for that. That didn't spark the same amount of outrage in some of our legacy media as it should have. In fact, you'd have reporters standing in front of a Birdie building saying that it was peaceful, mostly peaceful. I mean, are you kidding me? So it was a total disaster what was going on, but the anti-police rhetoric and what they were doing, of course, that fueled the defund movement. But even short of that, are you going to want to wear the uniform and go out and risk your life for a community that doesn't appreciate the sacrifice that you're making? And one of the things we're proud of in Florida is if you look at the people who were serving in uniform, and not just police, but fire, Port Authority on 9/11, and were there at the Twin Towers. Outside of those, the tri-state area where most of them were, Florida has we're the number one place for people that were there on 9/11. And when that was happening that day, I mean, we were obviously all shocked. You saw these uniformed people running in there, risking their lives. Every single American was thankful for what they were doing. We got to get back to that. We got to start respecting people who are willing to serve. And we see this all too often now, and we just unfortunately saw one just this week in Philadelphia where a police officer was murdered by some felon. And my view on that is, if you murder a police officer, you should get the death penalty for doing that. But what we've created, I think, in Florida, and what you need to see more of in places like Chicago and these other cities is, I can go to sheriff's departments, I could go to police departments, and you take a police officer that may have kids, and that police officer could look at those kids and say, you know what, I would love for them to follow in my footsteps here in the state of Florida. And they would feel really, really good about that. I don't know that would be the case in Chicago or in Seattle. Do they want their kids going up? No, they probably are working hard so their kids don't do that because of the way people are treated. And so that's when you know it's been a failure, when the people would not want to have their own kids. So in Florida, people know that they want to do that. The other thing that you see with this wokeification of law enforcement is passing ludicrous laws like eliminating cash bail. You guys just did that. And here's the thing. New York did this a couple years ago. Everybody said it was going to be a disaster, but they were pursuing ideology. They were not pursuing the interests of the public. They were not worried about the interest of people wearing the uniform and their safety. They had an agenda, and they were trying to pursue that agenda. Well, what happens in New York now? if you have so police officer go out, risk their lives to be able to apprehend a criminal, you bring the criminal in, and then they're in front of a judge, and in New York State, the judge is not allowed to consider whether that person's a danger to the community when they're making the bail decision. So what happens? They end up having to just release these people. So then you have the police officer who already had to risk his life to go into a situation to deal with this guy, then 2 weeks later gets called in to have to apprehend the same guy over and over again. How is that something that is good for public safety? And so it's been a total failure. Why you guys would be doing it here after seeing how disastrous it's been is just beyond me. But I can tell you this, when I talk to people that come to Florida, yes, some of the main things that you think of, but they are really, really upset about what's gone on with the law enforcement policies, not standing up for law and order. And the New Yorkers in particular come down and they are saying when they did the no cash bail, all hell broke loose. And that's exactly what you see. You guys are going to see that, unfortunately, in Illinois. People are not going to be safe in their communities like they should because that policy is trying to pursue ideology over public safety. So that is wrong, and we are not going to do that in the state of Florida. In these states, when you see the failure, you've got to be man enough to stand up and admit it didn't work. Too few politicians are willing to do that.